look to our pantries when we are making dinner and you think to yourself, okay, there are staples you always have, but we want to introduce maybe some new staples to you. Actually, Chen does. She's here. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
So we all know that you love food.
Yes.
So do I. When you go to the pantry, there are certain things you know you're going to see all the time. You're probably going to see beans, you're going to see some tuna, you're going to see pasta. You want to introduce a few new staples that we should all have.
So these are my kitchen essentials that I think a lot of people are probably familiar with, and you may have one or two or all of these in your home, but maybe you've only used them for that one recipe that you bought them for. So tahini, for example. This is sort of the magic ingredient when you make hummus at home. So it's sesame paste. So just to show you what it looks like, this is it here when it's plain. And so you would use a little bit of this when you're making hummus. So maybe you have tahini and maybe you haven't used it since you made hummus. Yeah. Well, it is such a great way to add a new level of flavor to your sweet and savory. One of my favorite things to do is to make a dressing. Super easy. And another thing you can use it for is, you know, like yogurt dips when you have a fruit platter? Yeah. So mix it up with a tiny little bit of tahini, yogurt, some cinnamon and honey. Really great when you're entertaining. And also if you have kids that eat fruit because there's something to dip it in, right? Like, you know, some kids just, they need a little something. And this is a nice healthy option. In terms of dressing, it's so easy. It's just taking some tahini, lemon juice, olive oil, and then mixing in whatever else you want. So I've added a little bit of garlic. I also like a touch of sweet. I like a little bit of honey or a maple syrup as well. And you're just playing around. And if you're trying to eat more veg, as a lot of people are, and you're like, we just, you know, it's kind of plain and boring. Yeah. Honestly, just take out the tahini and it will change the flavor and you'll be eating another helping of vegetables. I promise you this.
You know what? That's something I need to take into account because I see a salad and I just get sad.
Yeah, you get a little bored of the same thing. You're like olive oil and lemon juice.
Yeah, no, that is very smart. That looks like a really good dressing. Okay, so tahini.
Yeah, next thing is miso. So this is kind of what it would look like if you're buying it at the grocery store. Now, the basic rule of thumb is the darker the color, the stronger the flavor. So miso is basically, it's mostly soybeans, a fermenting agent, salt, and water. But it can also be mixed with some rice or barley. So the lighter the miso often has some rice in it. And it's something that you would only use a little bit of. Like if you ever tasted it on its own, you will not like it. Right. So you probably know it as miso soup, but it's also great in a nice, so I did a miso tofu ranch dip. Oh, nice. So for veggies, so this is the kind of thing that you're probably preparing anyway. Veggies, fruit platters. That's right. Miso glazed fish. You see this on a lot of restaurant menus. You're talking $20 to $30. Yeah. Great way to be doing it at home. So a little bit of sugar, some wine or vinegar. Nice way to just be changing up your proteins.
So people who like that flavor, I mean, if you've never tried miso yet, try it. Because if when you try it, it's like pleasing on the palate. And you will want to add it and incorporate it into more recipes.
And it's very salty, so start off with a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit goes a long way.
Don't take a spoon of it. It looks like peanut butter, but it's not. So don't do that. You will not be happy. The next thing I've been keeping in my pantry for at least the past 10 years is an almond beverage. So a lot of people who are avoiding dairy, then this is something they're really familiar with. Well, I consume copious amounts of dairy, as you know. I love it.
You love cheese.
I do. But I love this just for its like light almond taste. So for example, like an Almond Breeze, which very versatile. So people are using this in their smoothies, their breakfast cereals. Think about using it in your sweet and savory for your baking and your cooking. For example, this creamy pasta here is actually dairy-free. So it's made with butternut squash, a little bit of almond beverage, and you're whirling it up, which kind of gives it a nice creamy texture. And this soup, so my dad and my brother both have issues with dairy, so they would see a creamy soup and they would run away. But again, truly, but it's cauliflower cooked in some Almond Breeze and then pureed, and that gives you that nice creamy texture as well. And for desserts, I do a lot of baking with almond beverage as well. So if you know someone who's, you know, avoiding milk, or when you're entertaining too, you just want to be aware of what people aren't having. Now tofu.
Yes, let's talk tofu.
Let's talk tofu. So I don't know, some people have a love-hate relationship with tofu, but I grew up eating a lot of tofu. Yes. And if you haven't seen it in its plain variety, this is kind of what this is what it looks like. Yeah. So my dad made tofu growing up when I was growing up in Nova Scotia. So throughout the 80s and 90s, and he just turned 78, and he's cutting back on his tofu making because my mom says that he's so slow. But it's soybeans, and when I was growing up, it was not a commonly consumed food. Like people looked at tried it, they didn't really know what it was. But now with people eating more vegetarian options, wanting to do meatless Mondays, wanting like a protein that's good for them that isn't meat, I feel like a lot more people are welcoming tofu into their lives.
Yes.
So just when you're buying tofu, some of the complaints I get is, well, it falls apart. So make sure you're buying the proper tofu for your recipe. So a soft or silken tofu, that's great for dressings if you want to like roll it up, for smoothies as well. You want to add a little bit of protein to your smoothie. Some tofu is great. You can get medium, you can get firm, and then the firm you just want to squeeze out sort of the extra water in it by like weighing it down. And I know that we had some photos, but I'm not sure if... I
want to see them. So, I mean, I'm in love with your parents. Anyone who follows Pei on social media, you know a lot about her parents. That's her mom and dad. And what are they doing right there, Pei?
So that's in Halifax at their shop. They're at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And they're making their steam buns. And this is my dad making his tofu. So he's been doing this for almost 40 years now.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole process right there happening, and then there's the final.
There's the finished
How long does it take?
It takes, I just remember them getting up at like the crack of dawn to soak the beans, and then that whole process. And I was never really supposed to be around. I was supposed to be studying and not fighting with my brother. So that was what my job was as the older sister.
But your love of food, right? I mean, you've been around it all your life, so it makes perfect sense.
And that's why I'm like, just try these out. Try it out. Bring these things into your kitchen. They're very inexpensive, but they'll really change up the way you eat. I
like the firm tofu because you can fry it.
Yes, and that's the thing. Is just leave this for an hour or so under some weight, and you'll squeeze out the water, and then that way it'll absorb like the marinade or whatever sauce you have. So that will fix one of your problems when you're cooking with tofu.
Really good, Pei.